For this assignment, I interviewed Kim Duckett, Head of Research and Instructional Services at Duke University Libraries. Ms. Duckett has used components of instructional design throughout her career as an academic librarian since she graduated from the master's program in library science at UNC at Chapel Hill in 2001. I was interested in learning about how instructional design is incorporated into academic library instruction, particularly since those sessions provide limited exposure to the students and their final work products. I was especially eager to find out how Ms. Duckett used evaluation or assessment in her instructional design process. In the field of librarianship, I expected that there would be vast differences between theory and practice. Instructional design is slowly being integrated into the field of library and information literacy instruction at academic institutions. Ms. Duckett believes that libraries are increasingly interested in instructional design experience. She stated that, in libraries you see a lot more jobs that are for instructional design librarians, or with an expectation that you are either going to have had those experiences or that you're going to bring instructional design thinking into your role. Academic libraries are expanding their instructional offerings to include online workshops and classes, MOOCs, and a variety of other innovative outreach efforts. Ms. Duckett believes that there is a great deal of opportunity for instructional designers in the academic library field. Ms. Duckett does not have formal education in instructional design. However, instructional design has touched on her work throughout her career. After earning her undergraduate degree in philosophy and religious studies at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, she completed her graduate degree in information and library science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2001. Ms. Duckett stated, "My experience in instructional design is completely self-directed learning. The only course I've taken is the Adult Learner at North Carolina State." Much of Kim Duckett's instructional design knowledge and experience has resulted from the work she has done in academic libraries. After graduating with her master's, Duckett worked at North Carolina State University, focusing on library instruction for distance learners, a new frontier for librarians in the early 2000s. As the distance learning librarian at NC State, Duckett worked closely with instructional designers in the online training and development program. She credits this role and those instructional designers for exposing her to the concepts and practices of instructional design. As the distance learning librarian, she created video tutorials, online guides, and online workshops for students. In developing these tools, she began to use instructional design thinking to consider methods for teaching students, many of them adult learners. Her exposure to instructional design prompted her to learn about the ADDIE methodology and the work of specific instructional designers. In 2009, as the Associate Head of Reference and Instruction at North Carolina State University, Kim Duckett had an opportunity to gain further instructional design experience when she managed a team of librarians responsible for creating instructional videos. The creation of these videos involved the analysis of users' needs, design and development, implementation, and evaluation considerations. The team identified concepts that were challenging for students, such as bias or the lack of a perfect source, and then corroborated those issues with instructors. Duckett explained, "I honed a lot of experience in instructional design with making online video content, which was very iterative in the way that it was performed. Throughout this process, Duckett shared the ADDIE model with her coworkers and helped to institutionalize instructional design thinking in the instructional program at NC State." In May 2015, Ms. Duckett assumed the job of Head of Research and Instructional Services at Duke, where she manages 19 individuals in her department. She explains that instructional design occupies a smaller portion of her job duties as she has moved from a distance education and learning technologies focus to a management role. She stated, "I actually do a lot less on the ground, but even with my instruction team here, I mentioned ADDIE to them, and they had never even heard of it. So while instructional design is gaining momentum in academic libraries, there is still a lot of opportunity for its growth. As I mentioned earlier, I focused my extra 5 questions on the evaluation portion of the instructional design process. In academic libraries, there has been a great deal of interest over the past 5 to 10 years in evaluating student learning during information literacy instruction sessions. Many libraries are attempting to demonstrate correlations between the role of the library and student success. Ms. Duckett explained that she has not done an extensive amount of evaluation in her instructional design career. Both organizations that I've worked with are not interested in that level of granularity of assessment. Some places need it in order to make a case on campus, she stated. Duckett recognizes that it is difficult for academic libraries to assess student learning due to the limited amount of time that instructional librarians have to interact with students and the difficulty of following up with them. Much of the evaluation that Duckett and her colleagues have performed has involved surveying students to elicit subjective information. Survey questions asked what the students found most valuable about the instruction, what still confused them, and what could be improved. This type of assessment qualifies as indirect or effective assessment. Students are asked what they think or believe about the training experience or their skills. She also solicits instructor input on the perceived effectiveness of the instruction and the concepts that remain difficult for students. Additionally, Duckett has performed a limited amount of assessment using students' bibliographies to determine the types of sources they used. Evaluating bibliographies qualifies as a direct or performance measure of learning. Duckett believes that design models, whether for instructional design, software design, or product design, all follow the same basic structure. The cycle typically incorporates the components of ADDIE: analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. At NC State, her team used the cyclic methodology of ADDIE and focused on learning outcomes, scope, and iterative feedback. Duckett explained that the language and structure of the ADDIE model shaped the thought process involved in designing instruction. She stated, "For me, in instructional design, I always think in terms of ADDIE, but I'm not beholden to ADDIE. What's important is know your users, take time to design what you're doing, to implement it, and to figure out, did it work?" It's kind of a cycle in that way. Duckett and her team at Duke are currently working on implementing the concept of flipped instruction, a strategy that she and her team are planning to pilot with first-year writing students at Duke next fall. For those classes, the instructional team will create a library of packaged, adaptable activities that can be reused by other instructional librarians. Good instructional design produces reusable content that can be modified for future instructional purposes. Ms. Duckett recognizes that there are challenges in working with subject matter experts, specifically faculty members. She explains, "Some people let instructors drive what they think should be taught rather than us staking a claim on our expertise. Often instructors do not fully understand what librarians know and what they can do for students in terms of information literacy and the research process. Librarians realize that the recurring challenges for students in information literacy include refining topics, evaluating sources, and identifying peer-reviewed articles. They must be able to communicate these challenges to faculty members." Duckett maintains that there can be rewarding relationships with SMEs, often developed out of common interests such as learning technologies, which can then lead to partnerships involving information literacy. At both NC State and Duke, Duckett has had positive experiences working with subject matter experts. She quickly identified her most rewarding experience working with an SME as her teaching partnership with an instructor of upper-level science writing at NC State. In working with the instructor's students, Duckett conducted a 75-minute instructional session focusing on scholarly communication concepts such as the cost of journals, open access, the peer review process, and scientific publication. According to Duckett, hands down, it was the most rewarding and enriching instructional design that I've done. As a subject matter expert, she really knew that these are the kinds of things that will help the students write and understand better. Over the course of her career, Duckett has developed significant experience with instructional and learning technologies. She remembers the technical challenges of using those technologies early in her career. When she began working as the NC State Distance Learning Librarian in 2001, she used a reference chat coupled with a phone call to interact with distance learners. Since then, she has worked with Blackboard Collaborate, Camtasia, Captivate, Jing, and Course Tools, a product developed by NC State. Duckett's experience with a wide range of technology has helped her develop partnerships with instructors and expand her instructional outreach. Project management is another important component of an instructional designer's process, and one that Duckett enjoys. She stated, "I really thrive in that environment and consider it one of my strengths." She defines project management as putting boundaries around initiatives, and she suggests that there is not a great deal of project management thinking in libraries. She believes that project management is extremely important for librarians and recommends that they learn about concepts such as project goals, scope, timeline, and completion. Instructional design is making inroads into library and information literacy instruction, but there is still a great deal of opportunity for growth in this area. As Duckett mentioned, many of the instructional and learning technologies positions in libraries are using instructional design processes, and new hires in these areas are often expected to be familiar with the principles and practices involved in instructional design. Most librarians, however, do not receive formal training in instruction and education in their library science master's programs. So it is important that librarians take advantage of opportunities to learn about the methodology and practice of instructional design. There is great potential for instructional librarians to incorporate instructional design more systematically into their instruction. Although the instructional design practiced in libraries does not seem to rigidly follow the instructional design methodology, elements of instructional design will most assuredly strengthen the effectiveness and focus of library instruction.